In today's NFL, the Detroit Lions are a team that have a lot of respect and admiration for. But in times past, that was not always the case, and some former players have spoken out against the team. Well, one said former player is speaking out, but now in a positive light towards the team. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. My friends, I'm going to tell you this right now. When it comes to the Detroit Lions, one of the things that I particularly love, not only as a Lions fan, but also because of the fact that I am of a historical mind, that's what my college degree is in, is that I love looking back on things that have happened, whether I was around for it or not, and finding a controversy, finding a dichotomy, finding something that's ridiculously different to what happened previously to what is happening now. Well, let's think about this, folks. There has been a lot of these things that have been happening over the last couple of years, especially since Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have taken over. We have seen a massive reversal of things that have been prior to the Detroit Lions to now, because pretty much everything that the Lions are now is the exact opposite of what they used to be. And it's beautiful to behold. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, here's why. We have had times in the past where former players have not exactly been too kind or have been, how should I dare say it, approving or friendly towards the Lions organization. There have been times where there have been open feuds with players, such as with Megatron. There have been times where former players have said things negatively about the organization. Well, why am I exactly talking about it from that context? Here's why. Obviously, we know that the Lions traded for Za'darius Smith last week on Tuesday, the actual date of the deadline. Now, how Za'darius Smith factors into all of this, we're going to find out here throughout the entirety of this episode. But when you take a look at last Sunday night, there was a lot of people that wanted to see Za'darius Smith play that Sunday night game against the Texans, Za'darius Smith being one of them. But Dan Campbell ultimately decided to overrule that, interest, overrule that desire, and, insist that Za'darius Smith, take the time off so that way he could, one, officially have a bye week to actually rest, recuperate, recover, but also so that way he could go back home to Florida, spend time with his family, check over his property, check over all the things that were down there due to the recent hurricanes that have been happening in Florida. Now, when this actually happened, there were a lot of people in the NFL who looked at the Lions doing that, particularly Campbell doing that, as, okay, that is a very class act, that's very classy of them to do that, because the Lions did not have to extend that to him. They didn't have to say, oh, well, we're just going to give you a week off because of circumstances being what they are. They could have said, no, you're not getting any rest. We're going to put you out there because we've traded for you. We want you out on the field. They could have very well done that. And let's just call it for what it is. Nobody would have really batted an eyelash at that. But what Campbell and the Lions did by allowing Za'darius Smith to sit out, insist that he sit out, take the time to be with family, check over his property, and rest up, what the Lions did and what Campbell did is that he made it abundantly known that football players and their personal needs are over any time winning a football game. And think about it. The Lions won that football game even without Za'darius Smith being in the game. And Za'darius was not actually on the field in uniform, but he was on the sideline. He was giving pointers, he was coaching, he was helping out the defensive line and the other edge rushers. But what the Lions did as far as that, was absolutely great as far as the message it sent to the NFL. But it also got some admiration from a former player that when he left the Lions organization, he didn't have exactly a whole lot of positive things to say about the organization. Now, what person am I talking about here? I'm talking about former defensive tackle Damian Snacks Harrison. Damian Snacks Harrison, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you're a Lions fan, you definitely remember him for two main reasons. The first main reason that you're going to remember Snacks Harrison is because, one, when he arrived in Detroit, for lack of a better term, he instantaneously turned our run defense around. His mere presence alone instantaneously improved our rush defense, because we traded for him about midway through the 2018 season, and once we got him in there, our run defense went up exponentially because of his presence. Now, that didn't necessarily translate to 2019, but for like the half season that we did have him, he was pretty damn good for our defense. But what most people remember Snacks Harrison for is the fact that when he left the team in, after the 2019 season going into 2020, Harrison made some rather negative statements about how he felt about being traded to the Detroit Lions from the New York Giants, and also about his time with the franchise. Now, why am I saying this? Well, again, stick with me, you'll understand why I'm saying it. There's a lot about this that's going to all connect itself at the end, so just stick around. What I'm referring to with Snacks Harrison is this. He said, and this is back in April of 2020, if I recall correctly, he said, "To be completely honest with you, I didn't want to go to Detroit because of some of the things that I had heard from the guys who were there. So when I got the call that that's where I was traded, I didn't answer the phone for a couple of hours. Bob Quinn was calling me and I didn't pick up the phone because I was trying to figure out a way to get out of it." Okay. That is a rather big statement. Now, I understand this is from 4 years ago, but there is a big reason why this statement has pertinence to what we're talking about with Za'Darius Smith and the Detroit Lions. There's a huge reason why. Because think about this, folks. To put this in the proper context, not only did Snacks Harrison admit that he was absolutely adamant about not wanting to come to Detroit, he was so adamant that he actually ignored Bob Quinn's calls to him because he was trying to find a way to get out of having to come here. Okay, that is something there, because I don't care who you are. I understand that maybe you might not want to go to a certain team, but I'm going to tell you this. I have not really heard of too many players that would directly ignore the GM of said team they were just traded to because they were actively trying to figure a way to get out of the trade. But the reason why his statement is even more damning for him is because if you go back, and this actual video is still up on YouTube, that's how I found this out, and it's actually on the Detroit Lions channel. If you go back to his first press conference that he had with the local, Detroit press, which was in the locker room after he had just had one of his first practices with the team, he specifically said that he was excited to be in Detroit. Wait a minute here. You say you're excited to the media, but hey, a year and a half later, when you're no longer in the building, you're no longer part of the team, and you can say whatever the John Brown hell you want, you say that you did not want to go to Detroit. You were absolutely trying to find any way you could get out of it. So, for lack of a better term, Snacks Harrison lied through his teeth when he got there. Now, obviously, that was because he had to play the part. He had to be professional about it. But I'll tell you this right now. If you go back and you watch the video, you can definitely tell by the expression on his face through about 85% of the video, he was not at all happy to be in Detroit. Sure, he tried to put on smiles and he tried to be, relaxed about it, but it was like, dude, you could tell he didn't want to be there. Now, while I can't fault the fact that, Snacks Harrison was ignoring freaking Quinn's calls because knowing what we know now, I would not have answered the phone call. In fact, I would have probably turned my phone off and just said, hey, I'm not bothering with this. But to lie to the fan base, to lie to the freaking press, rather than just simply saying, hey, you know what? This wasn't what I wanted, but I'm here. I'm going to try to make the best of it. Here's the way I look at it, folks. I would much rather have the truth, no matter how grotesque or ugly it is, or if it hurts my feelings, rather than being lied to. And then especially find out later that it was a lie. Because that to me is extremely disrespectful. Now, the further thing that makes this even worse is that if you go further into that quote I was talking about, you have to understand that the Lions actually extended Snacks Harrison at the end of the 2018 season. They extended him to another year on his current deal that he had when he was with the freaking Giants. I think they added another year to the deal for like $11.25 million or something like that. And of that $11.25 million, 8.5 of it was guaranteed money. Well, here's the reason why this is, again, not a good look for Snacks Harrison, because he stated that in 2019, right after he got extended, that he was hell-bent he was wanting to get the hell out of Detroit. He wanted to get out at all costs. So wait a minute here. You get an extension, you get more money out of Detroit, but then right after, you're hell-bent to get out of Detroit. So in essence, not only did you lie when you first got there, but in essence, because of the pretense of the situation, you pretty much ran off. You stole money from the Detroit Lions. That's in essence what that comes out to. Now, that's pretty damn bad. You lie to the fan base, you lie to the press, you in essence are stealing money from the Detroit Lions because you already stated you didn't want to be there, you already stated you didn't want to come here, and that this was not where you wanted to be, but then you get an extension with the Lions, and then the last year you're there, you pretty much don't do much of anything, you still get paid, and then you cut tail and run and still take that $8.5 million guaranteed from the Lions. Okay. Not exactly painting Snacks Harrison here in a very positive light, but I'm going to tell you this right now. There's a reason for this. I'm not doing it just to attack Snacks Harrison, and it's not just to focus on him. And that's why I have this next point here. Why am I doing all this recap about Snacks Harrison and his obvious disdain for the Lions organization? I know by this point some people are probably asking, what the hell does that have to do with the Za'Darius Smith situation? And obviously, here's how. If you take a look at this tweet, some probably have already seen it, some may have not. But the tweet pretty much is stating that, hey, Snacks Harrison, once he found out that the Lions were insisting that, Za'Darius Smith take the week off to, again, go spend time with family and all that other stuff I talked about at the very beginning of this episode, this is what Za'Darius Smith said. And this is in pertinence. He's talking about head coach Dan Campbell. He said, I'd run through an army tank for a dude if he'd done that for me. I finally see what the players, staff, and city of Detroit see in him. Dan the man. Okay. Now you're going to understand why I went through such a painstaking task of setting up all that information prior to about Snacks Harrison. For this kind of a statement to come from the same man who lied to the press, who made himself, after he left Detroit, into kind of like a negative image of a public enemy because he lied, he in essence stole money under the false pretense with the Lions. You think about all that nonsense I just laid out there. Now we come back, 4 years later, and he's now had a complete 180. A complete change of heart. Now he says that he has, kind of seen the light, so to speak, and that he understands why the Lions, why the city, why the fans and the players, they absolutely love Dan Campbell. But here comes my next follow-up question here for the obvious fan that would probably be watching this and being like, what? Why should I even take any of this statement, with any sort of heat? You just called him a liar. You just said he pretty much lied to the fan base, so why should I take anything that he's saying at face value? There are two reasons why. First and foremost, let's understand the first reason. Because of his previous actions while he was here at Detroit and after he left Detroit, the disdain he had for the team, the fact that he didn't want to be here in the first place, is like, okay, all of those negative actions and all those negative, comments that he had, the fact that he's now making a positive comment in such the opposite direction, there's no way in hell I couldn't possibly think of it of being genuine. When you have somebody that has such a disdain for something and then they go the exact opposite route, That's not because they're trying to play up to something, especially not when it's 4 years after the fact of when they made said comments. So that's reason number one. But reason number two, you also have to ask yourself this main question. Why did Harrison say what he did? In essence, what I'm asking is what caused Harrison to do all those things I just talked about in relation to this? I'm going to say this right now. I did my, paint job of supposedly making Harrison look like this bad dude, but I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't believe for a second that Harrison is a bad person. I don't believe that at all. You have to ask yourself why. The reason why is rather when you look at when he said that, what he said, I guarantee you it was because of what he said in the very beginning of that quote. Because again, you go back to the quote I was referencing. In the very beginning of the quote, he said that he had heard things from some of the guys that were there in Detroit. Well, wait a minute here. 2018, 2019, when's that? That's Matt Patricia time. Okay, now it's starting to make some damn sense here, folks. Patricia, I'm not even going to spend much time on this, but for us Lions fans, all of us know that Matt Patricia was an arrogant, disrespectful, loathsome human being and coach. And there have been definitely plenty of stories, definitely plenty of things that have now come out after he was fired, and some of them actually during the time when he was the coach. But what we found out is that oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Patricia, he was not particularly kind. He was not particularly respectful to players who didn't toe the line for him. And what do I mean by that? They didn't toe the line for his Patriot way mindset. Everything with him was, listen, you're going to follow exactly what I tell you to do, no questions asked. You are going to do it or we're going to have a problem. And that was where a lot of issues started coming up, particularly with players that, listen, they weren't rookies, they weren't green, they weren't, just guys that just came off the freaking rookie block. They had been playing football for quite a damn while. But yet, freaking Matt Patricia comes in there as a first-time head coach, mind you, and he's telling all these guys, listen, you guys don't know crap about football. You guys are absolutely pathetic, telling some of them they sucked. And I'm going to tell you this right now. As a man, that is going to really get under your skin. Forget being a football player. As a man, that is going to make you very angry. Because, listen, I take pride in myself as a human being before anything else. And you're not going to freaking talk down to me and, try and dehumanize me just to try and get a point across. Especially when we're in a room full of 50 other individuals. That crap ain't flying. And then that is why there were issues that then led to players either being cut, traded, whatever the case was. Such cases were as these, but not limited to, like Quandre Diggs getting traded, Darius Slay getting traded. I think Ashawn Robinson, he got let go or cut, and then again, he was a jubilant person along with both Slay and Diggs when they found out Patricia got fired. Same thing with Eric Ebron, Stephen Tulloch. These are all guys that had some connection to the team or did actually play for freaking Patricia. And they all, when they found out Patricia got fired, they were joyous. They were jubilant that he got fired. So, okay here. It's safe to assume that some of these players I just mentioned, whether it's Diggs, whether it's Slay, whether it's Robinson, whoever the hell it might have been, they would have told Harrison what was going on behind the scenes, behind closed doors when the cameras weren't on. Because from outside perspective, we didn't really have a whole lot of the stuff we now have about Patricia. The only thing we really knew about Patricia is that Patricia could be gruff, he could be, short, he could be rude with reporters. But until we started actually hearing what was going on inside the locker room, none of that stuff had even come to light. But I guarantee you, that stuff was relayed to Harrison, and he was not wanting to be there because of it. So let's think about it. Patricia obviously did what he did. And obviously, Snacks Harrison would have had an issue with that and thus have an issue with the Lions organization. Well, let's also understand something here. When that was going on, Sheila was not in charge of the Lions. That was her mother, Martha. And as I've said before in the past, again, I mean no disrespect, but it is the facts. Martha and William Clay Ford, rest in peace, they had no particular interest in getting into the minutia of the freaking operations of the Lions. They were pretty much like, listen, we're going to leave it to the coach, we're going to leave it to the GM, they're going to run things, we're just going to maintain the ownership role. Once Sheila came in, that all changed. That was when Sheila was like, listen, I'm taking an active role in what's going on here. Well, now as we know, when Sheila got in and, pulled the plug on the whole group and then brought in Brad Holmes, brought in Dan Campbell and everybody else, that's where everything changed, and now we find ourselves at this current moment. And you have to think about it here, folks. The Lions, at this current moment, are one of, if not the most sought-after player destination in the NFL. And why is that? Because again, of the freaking dichotomy of what the Lions were prior to versus what they are now. And I take you guys back to an episode I just literally released, I think it was like a day or so ago. I'm talking about the grit culture. Think about it, folks. The grit culture, as I just talked about, is a concept. It is built upon the core tenet that people, the players, they make the culture. It's not rules. It's not some stupid-ass system like the Patriot way. That was why freaking Patricia was never going to work here, because he was all about trying to shove the damn Patriot way down the Lions players' throats, whether they liked it or not. And I'm sorry, that's not going to work. These are still men at the end of the day. They're not going to be treated like they're children. That was why Patricia was never going to work here. He was way too gruff. He was way too freaking rude and disrespectful. It was not going to work, no matter what kind of brilliant defensive scheme he supposedly had. That's why for Campbell, who's not supposedly a brilliant coach, when he brought the grit culture in, the players instantaneously latched onto it because they're like, hey, we're not just being treated like players. We're being treated like men. We're being treated like we're actual human beings, not just objects that are getting paid to do something. That was the reason why the grit culture took on so fast. Because, Campbell is a player's coach. He understands the players. He knows what they need and what they want from leadership. Because, that's right, he used to be a player himself. So think about it. Now that I put all this into context, think about the whole thing with za'darius Smith. That is why when za'darius Smith was, trying to play, Dan Campbell's like, listen, I understand you're wanting to play, but the better thing is for you to take your time. You guys, you need to get a bye week. You need to get your rest so that way you're ready for the second half of the season because we're going to need you. So here's why, with za'darius Smith being excited, amped up to play for the Lions, this is also why za'darius has looked like he has been in Detroit for years, rather than only a couple of days. I mean, for crying out loud, when he went to the Pistons game, he looked like he fit right in. When he was at Lions practice, he looked like he fitted right in. Like he'd never missed a beat. He'd been there his whole life. And the reason why is because Campbell provides the tone each and every day by being consistent with his, with his attitude, with his mindset, and it's also consistency with his message. And the message is, hey, we're here to play football. We're here to win football games. But that as a family, as a brotherhood, no one is above the other. We are all equal here. There's nobody that has more value than anybody else. We are all on equal footing. Again, something else that was vastly different from the Patricia era. Hence the reason, yet again, why Snacks Harrison would have had the problems he had. Because it's like, listen, with Campbell, he said it multiple times before. He's like, listen, if there's a problem with one of the players, they know they can come right up to my office. They can talk with me any time of the day. That's an open door policy. People want to talk about how they might have an open door policy, but with Campbell, he actually stands by it. It's like, listen, if you've got a problem, I don't care if you want to call me an a-hole or anything else. You come up, talk to me, we'll figure it out. That's the difference between Campbell and virtually anybody else. He lets the players be players. He lets the players be men because he understands that from them. He knows where they're coming from. And that's why, because Campbell allows these players to have the time whenever they want to come up and talk to them, come up and talk to him, whether it's also the staff as well. These players understand and respect Campbell because of that openness, because of the fact that he cares about them. And that's why when he decided to insist actually that za'darius Smith take that break, it wasn't because he didn't want za'darius Smith to play. I guarantee you, he definitely wants him to play. But what mattered more was that he got the time to be with his family and to rest up rather than making sure he was out there to play a football game. Because, oh, that's right, just to bring this back to Snacks Harrison here, Snacks Harrison was the very first player in NFL history to play a full 17-game season. Because, oh, that's right, Matt Patricia didn't allow Snacks Harrison to sit. He made sure he played the very next week. That's why this is a massive difference here. That's why Snacks Harrison had an issue with the Lions and the organization because of what they did to him. They didn't show him respect. They didn't show him what it actually meant to be a good organization. That's why when, Campbell finally, got Harrison sorry here. I'm getting my names mixed up. That's why when Harrison made the statements he said about Campbell, and that's why he finally got what the Lions, media, culture, fans, and all these other players were saying about him. Because he placed za'darius' needs, the individual players' needs, over the team and over football in general. He made it abundantly clear. Players matter the most. Not that they matter more. They matter the most. That makes a huge impact on players. That's why I'm telling you all, what Dan Campbell has done has sent shockwaves through the damn NFL. He is doing things that are completely unorthodox from times in the past. I'm going to tell you this right now. If we'd have gone back to the early 2000s, you wouldn't have been hearing about no players getting a week off. That'd have been freaking absolutely ludicrous. But Campbell says, hey, we want you to rest up. Take the week off, get some rest, get ready for the next half of the season because we're going to need you. Campbell has always done things his own way, which is completely opposite to conventional wisdom. But here's the thing. The conventional wisdom didn't factor in Dan Campbell, and now Dan Campbell is making conventional wisdom look like stupidity. That's why this whole thing was Za'Darius Smith, freaking Damon Snacks Harrison, it all kind of connects. It takes a while to explain it. But once you actually sit back and you take a look at what Campbell did, and you take a look at the two different statements between Za'Darius and Damon Snacks Harrison, there's a really profound connection between these two situations. With Snacks Harrison, he came to hate the organization because of what Patricia did to him, because of what Patricia was like to him. But with Za'Darius Smith, as soon as he gets here, he loves the organization. He loves the fan base. It looks like he's been here his whole life. Why? Because when he got here, he was treated like a human being. He was treated like he was a part of the family. There was no freaking integration process. It was like, hey, you're here, you're a part of us. Let's get to work. You see the difference? And then you get the different results. That's how it works. And that's why this is important. But anyway, folks, I'm going to end this episode. I believe I've explained my point rather thoroughly. So I'm going to say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I also want to highly encourage y'all, if you have not subscribed in the past, to please subscribe. But also, make sure you hit that bell notification icon at the bottom of the page, so that way you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, to make sure you share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. The more we do this, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that being said, whether you're a long-time viewer or this is the first time you're viewing me, I hope you all have enjoyed the content. I hope you all have got something out of it. I also want to say to everybody, I hope you all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, which is tomorrow, I'll see you all in the next episode.